It's Taylor. We have some guests with us tonight. It's awesome.
I didn't dress up occasionally.
Wow. The delay was like a full minute. Whoa, 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 whoa.
You get to ponder longer. Good one. Delay. Fun with this.
Yeah.
Welcome to CPAC.
Yeah. Rod. What was his name? Rod
Sterling?
Yeah.
Twilight. Is it these things?
That
They said they were.
You could probably start singing a song and then sing over it. Yeah. In sections. Section loop. Your brain melted too.
Taylor, Lori, can you talk to us real quick? If you can hear us.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. What was that again?
Oh, perfect.
Please, so make sure that you guys, that we hear you feedback. So I think we're good now.
It's a little tough to hear what you
Yeah.
just said.
Yeah, my microphone wasn't on.
There you are.
We were just having some technical difficulties, so I think we are okay now. And I
Okay.
think you guys can start your meeting.
Jessica, FYI, but the camera is pointed pretty far down and you're not really able to see anybody sitting in those chairs. You see mostly from the waist down. And so just an FYI, it doesn't matter, but it needs to be pushed up, I think.
I don't know. It looks okay on our end.
Oh, okay. Well, I can't really see the commission very well, but I don't care. But I thought for future it reference.
Okay.
Care.
Thank you.
I got all dressed up
Yeah,
today.
thanks, Lori.
Yeah, so would you like us to go ahead and get started? I can't see the screen either, so I'm gonna.
Taylor, we haven't even called the meeting to order yet. So if you could just
Yeah,
hang on.
for sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Kay. I know that was not easy, but we appreciate it. So thank you everybody for being here. This is the Carbondale Public Arts Commission meeting for Wednesday, February 7th. We've got all of our members here, Chris, Suzanne, Brian, and Michael, Luis. I think we can jump right into the agenda. We have the end of year budget. I don't know that needs an approval, but if there are any questions, I'll give you guys a few seconds to look over that and then we can move on. No questions? Great. I don't think there is anyone not present on the agenda, so we can go to item 4 and welcome a presentation from Heather Henry and Taylor about the 1% project for the pool. Thank you guys for being here and sharing that with us. We're excited to hear the updates and hope we can learn a little bit and answer any questions you guys have.
Awesome, thanks. Yes, Heather Henry with Connect One Design, and online, Taylor Higgins from Land and Shelter. Say hi, Taylor.
Hello, thanks for having us, guys.
Everyone, cross your fingers because I'm about to share the screen. So wait for it. And Hooray. All
Hey.
right.
Beautiful.
So I am gonna let Taylor go ahead and kind of run with this. We'll tag team a little bit. And Taylor, just let me know when you want to go to the next slide.
Yeah, sure. So as Heather said, we are the design team on the Carbondale Aquatic Center, and we're here to talk to you guys about the 1% for the arts for this project. And we're going to give you sort of a little bit of a background of, you know, what the project is, where we're at in the process, and sort of give you the preview of where we think, you know, the arts, that 1% might work best for this project. Yeah, if you want to slide. So the overall timeline, just to kind of give you guys the overview of where we're at in the bigger picture of the process. The master plan for this project started in 2020, and you know there was a lot of feasibility and community outreach, and a lot of work done as part of that master plan to kind of figure out what this project wanted to be for the town in looking at redeveloping the pool. The successful bond vote happened in April of 22, and that was the bond to fund the project. And that was based on the master plan. So the design was kind of conceptually considered, and the project budget was based on that master plan. The current design process began in April of 2023 when the town put out an RFP for architectural and design services. They also brought a general contractor on board who's been helping us with the pricing, and that effort really began in the spring of last year. And today we are currently we just issued the pricing package for the schematic design on the project, and are getting ready to submit for a land use application this week, actually. And that will sort of kick off this next wave of land use approvals and project outreach. And I apologize, these last kind of couple bullets, they weren't updated in the past, like the past week, we've literally kind of adjusted the timeline. We're really kind of pushing for a fast track on the demo permit and land use process. We've been working really closely with the contractor and the town, and really trying to figure out how we can move this project forward so that the town doesn't lose 2 complete pool seasons. So in an effort to kind of drive this forward, we're really going to try and apply for a demo permit this spring, which would allow the contractor to begin demo and site excavation in hopefully early June. And then the building permit and pool permit would come in the fall, so like August, September, and that would allow him to get foundations in before winter and work on the building over winter, which would give sort of a good shot at getting the pool open by late in the season of 2025. Slide. So this is the master plan site plan, and it just kind of gives you an overview of where the project started when everyone really kind of started thinking about what this could be. You'll see the top of the plan there is Main Street. The left side of the plan is 7th Street. So Soapers Park is to the bottom, and Forest Service is to the right of this plan. And it is relatively similar in terms of the building. It's kind of a 3,000 square foot rectangle pushed up against Main Street. There was a 3-lane lap pool and a larger entertainment pool, and then a spa kind of off to the west edge of the pool deck there. And this was kind of how it was first envisioned when the project was studied, and the bond was pursued based on this kind of concept. Slide. Yeah. And so then to give you just kind of a snapshot on the budget, the original 2020 master plan cost was around 7 million was the estimate. The bond was a little bit higher than that. So $8 million was what was pursued to kind of give a little bit of margin in the budget and funds available for the project. And this was in 2020. And then in 2022, like post-pandemic, the construction industry sort of exploded, and project pricing has, more than doubled really in the last couple of years. And that really is just to say that this project has really been, constrained by budget pretty significantly. And the current scheme, we have an approved budget of $11.6 million, which is higher than the original bond that was obtained for the project. So council is looking at other ways to figure out how to fund this. I'm sorry, the Board of Trustees, and has agreed to the 11.6 all-in budget number. And that includes, so there's 20% in contingency, there's fees, soft cost, furniture. There's a lot of, a lot packed into that number. And then the $8.3 million budget within that is the actual hard cost for construction. So that's what we would base the 1% for the arts on, that number. And we're currently, as part of the schematic design pricing package that we issued last week, that's really, we've been able to carry the design far enough that we're working on getting sort of another round of pricing that's more accurate to what the actual project would be. Hopefully to confirm that we can hit that number with as much of the scope intact as possible. So from the timing standpoints, I think we've talked about most of these things. The original plan, we're planning hopefully to start demo in June. Staff does not plan to open the pool this summer, no matter what. That was sort of decided before this year. And then the 1% for the arts is around $83,000. And this is kind of just a snapshot of how that budget actually breaks down from total budget number and everything that fits within it. So that brings us to the current schematic design. There's the site plan on the right here, and then sort of an aerial shot looking back towards the building, and Main Street's kind of off to the top right, and 7th Street is kind of the top left corner. And you can see again, the building it's a little bit smaller actually than what was in the master plan. It's 3,000 square feet. It holds a ticket counter, a guard station, an office for the facility, bathrooms, a men's, women's, and everyone's bathroom. And then the pool mechanical and building mechanical space is a pretty sizable chunk of the building. The site plan, again, Main Street's kind of top of plan, 7th Street's on the left there. And you can kind of see the deliveries, trash pickup, that still happens in the same zone over there off the left. The primary kind of pedestrian route is off of that main corner up at the entry plaza zone. So like, that's where the ticket counter is. That's kind of where people are routing through, right? When you come to the pool, you go to that corner, go to the ticket window and then come through the gate. And then there's, we've got sort of seating, outdoor seating proposed underneath. There's that kind of bold dashed line. If you can see it, and that's a trellis. So it's a canopy that covers and provides some shade at that entry plaza and along the back of the building. So it allows for some nice like outdoor seating space and shade when it's, really hot. And we also are using a portion of that. We're proposing to use that for PV to kind of get a bigger offset to the energy use of the pool. And then the lap pool has changed a bit from the master plan. It's now a 6-lane lap pool. So it's a little bit bigger. The diving board shifted to that pool, and then the rec pool shrunk a little bit because it doesn't have to be as deep anymore. And then the spa is about the same. It's a 16-person spa over there, kind of to the left. Yeah, you can go slide, Heather. Okay, so then here's the zoomed in sort of version of that plan. And these are the zones that we're proposing for potential arts applications. The number one at the top, and we'll kind of go through these like we have a sheet sort of per scheme, but this is sort of the overview before we jump into that. The front sort of facade along Main Street, and then it kind of wraps to the west at the entry plaza, but that is kind of like one of the primary places that we've talked about incorporating this idea of I guess I should get back up just a second. The theme that we've really kind of identified as a design team and with the design advisory group, who's really kind of it's a stakeholder group from town who's really helping to drive the design forward on this project. The idea of sort of handmade or kind of a maker type feeling really resonated with everybody. And so that's kind of the the concept that we're using to drive forward some of these ideas. And so the facade is one of those places where we kind of took this idea of quilting and are applying it to the brickwork as an idea of how to make it sort of an artistic expression. And then option number 2 and 3 are post-treatment. So we have these big concrete, they're like 12-inch concrete posts for the trellis. And there's this idea about maybe like sculpting those or making them really interesting, integrating mosaic or glass pieces that can be really unique. Number 4 is the back kind of south wall of the building facing the pool. That is really a blank canvas. We're leaving the brick facade off of that south wall. And so it's really a CMU block wall. And it's a really great canvas for potentially, you know, a mosaic or something, you know, tile, some kind of, I don't know if that becomes a mural or something, but we have kind of some images to show you of that as well. And then number 5, that was maybe taking that mosaic onto the pool deck itself and like kind of making some kind of interesting pattern or something that kind of moves you through the pool deck and the site. Something that like expresses what the function is supposed to be was another sort of interesting take on that. And then number 6 is the pool fence that we have around all 3 sides of the site. We're talking about using a chain link fence for budget reasons. And there's some really cool ideas about integrating colors and different elements, kind of stitching that into the fence to really like elevate what it looks like, right, from the pool deck. So that's kind of the snapshot of those ideas. So we'll jump right into this sort of set of, got some renderings and sort of color swatches to talk about each one. This is the Main Street facade. And it's really, we started with this idea, kind of the top left blocks there are these quilt patterns. And we started to think about how could that translate into the brickwork and also create sort of this expression of light and like create a daylighting scheme really with the quilt pattern. So what you're kind of seeing there in blue in the middle of that rendering on the left is like, if this was nighttime, you would see some light coming through the glass block, which we've stitched into this brick weave pattern. And then at the same time, if it was daytime, the images there on the bottom, you would get kind of this diffuse light glow through the CMU block that's behind that brick wall into the bathroom. So we can't have just regular windows on Main Street because those bathrooms, like you don't want sightlines, right? So by creating kind of this dual wall system where it's the CMU structure and then the glass facade on the outside in the brick wall, it allows for the transfer of light in and out without the sightlines. So it's solving a couple different problems, but in a really interesting way. And then there's a couple swatches there that kind of give you quality of light and the sort of colors. We're still working to tune and refine, you know, what the pattern is, but these are kind of the ideas, like 2 tones of brick, terracotta and white or terracotta and black brick. This is the trellis post treatment. And on the left, you can see a couple rendered images of what those concrete posts look like underneath the trellis. And then the images on the right are kind of proposed like different ways that we've started thinking about, you know, maybe there's lights or texture or tile, or, you know, maybe those things become sculpted. I think there's a lot of potential, you know, opportunities with that. This is number 4, and this is the back of the building. So kind of giving you a sample of like what that looks like. It's just a, you know, it's a plain block wall. So it's like a perfect canvas to do something really kind of interesting and unique. It faces the pool. It could be really bright and fun. I think that could go a couple different ways, but the precedent images on the right there are just kind of giving you a sense of like, you know, could create some really interesting movement or texture with some tile ideas. Number 5 is the pool deck. And so this is, again, kind of giving you swatches on the right and rendering on the left. So the pool deck is currently, it's just plain concrete in the base sort of scope. So if we took, you know, a portion of sort of the arts budget, we could potentially look at folding in some mosaic tile or some colored concrete. And then this is the last one. Heather, do you want to speak to this one?
I can, yes. So fences are ridiculously expensive. And right now, what we have as our base budget is to do a chain link fence essentially everywhere except what would be the entry right off of Main Street and right at the ticket window. We've pretty much had to budget chain link. And then that said, we started to think about it as a canvas. So there's all sorts of different versions of this, right? Painting the mural just on chain link, doing these as actual inserts and mosaics. You know, there's some where it's crochet, like fabric treatments that do it. So we thought this was a really wonderful opportunity. And all of these, like opportunity 1 through 6, also have a variation in, call it their staying power. And so this would be one of the most ethereal in our mind, right? So this could, if it was an artist brief, we might say your installation needs to last 2 to 3 years, something like that. And then we could see that transitioning over. And right now we're looking at pricing, maybe not just a standard chain link, but there might be a color to it. So it'd be like a green backdrop. You know, it's dipped chain link. And so we're still pricing that, but this is kind of the idea of that last opportunity. It's a lot of fence too. You walk in, there's pretty much a whole stretch as you enter Sopris. So there's this whole area that faces out. And then from inside the pool, behind, you could see, you know, behind this whole stretch here is all chain link. And then this edge again that faces Sopris. We'll be able to do vegetation along the ditch. So hopefully we hide, you know, or just screen a little bit of that, but there's a lot of chain link, a lot of fencing. So that's the last opportunity.
Yeah. So I think, you know, we'd love to get your guys' feedback and just sort of hear what you think about the options we presented, and also what, you know, kind of next steps need to be for our process for really kind of moving some of these ideas forward.
Well, thank you for sharing all that. I feel like it's, you know, obviously a complicated project that's had a lot of history. And so thanks for sharing kind of how we got to where we are, and, you know, some of the challenges, and looking at these opportunities is just great. I think, you know, I have some questions that maybe we can start off with, and then just like open it to everybody else's questions. And some of my kind of initial thoughts are, you have ideas. So what are you really looking at in terms of, you're going to do this no matter what, and it's part of the like pricing that you're already pursuing, and then or like, how are you looking at where that like 1% piece is really going to be focused? And is that an opportunity not for the architectural design team and to be involved, but really bringing in an artist to have some of that more creative input on that piece?
You want me to take a first shot, Taylor?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So the 83,000 is budgeted. And then this was this first identification of opportunities. So the answer to your question would hopefully fall out of our discussion for the next few minutes, because I think we've tried to not make too many assumptions. We know we can't do all 6.
Gotcha.
So what resonates? What do we like? Where are the places where it feels like the artist would best integrate versus, oh, that might be, you know, a budget best spent by the architectural design or, you know, the landscape design or something like that. We can't do all 6. I will tell you that. I mean, not for the 83, from just, you know, instinct of that.
Cool. Yeah. And I think then on that piece, it's, you know, for me, it's how are artists engaged? Like obviously the fence, I think it's like pretty straightforward.
Easier.
I think when you showed the columns and there was like some almost like turned, like lathed kind of profile pieces, my mind went to, oh, like, is there a way to engage artists to come up with that profile a little bit so that we're not just getting a generic kind of off the shelf profile, but really finding a way that speaks to our community, you know, like,
Totally.
is it, you know, based on rock formations or geologic formations or river rock, or, you know, like making sure that there's an opportunity for an artist to have that input, not necessarily that they're kind of materializing and fabricating and producing that, but that there could be some really just at that entry level piece where artists from our community could really engage at a meaningful level. Because I think, you know, our artist pool is broad and deep and rich, and it's also limited in terms of what that opportunity could be. And so I think making sure that the scope of engagement with artists is something is sized in scope towards artists in the community would be something that would make sense to me. So looking at those opportunities, that's something I would keep in mind, I think.
And that feels like the fence and then this 2 and 3 with the columns seemed like that best fit to potentially both have the integration of the artist and their installation, where maybe the other 3 are more suited if it's an artist integration, but ultimately like executed in the construction documents of architect and landscape architect if it went to the ground plan or something like that.
Yep.
That was a little bit of our take also. And that's why we're interested too, and do any of these resonate more than another, that kind of thing.
Cool. Well, I'll open it up to what feels like it resonates with the group.
I think because of all the fencing you talked about, it makes me wonder, since there is landscape architecture in the budget, have they been tapped for ideas like, you know, hops that grow very quickly on fences? I mean, how much is going to be, I don't know, is it divvied up? Okay, landscaping should, you know, deal with this portion, or has that been decided?
Yeah, so we're the landscape architect also, so that's what Connect One Design is doing, is that we do the landscape architecture, Land and Shelter is the architect. So the answer is yes, absolutely. That won't tap into the 83,000 though.
Sure.
So we want to be able to then, you know, capitalize on the 83,000, let's say above and beyond the vegetation.
So it might be working in conjunction.
Exactly. So like, yes, there's a landscape plan and a planting plan. But there's also just a lot of limitations of what we'll be able to grow where, and then some design directives as well. So for example, the fence, so this kind of stretch of the fence, let's say that
Sopris there?
Yeah, yep. So that's Sopris to the south. This is the Miners Memorial, basically. This is the existing bridge. So this pool is gonna, you know, extend its way into what we see as Sopris Park right now. So you'll cross the bridge and kind of have a nice little entry path, couple of benches, and the fence will be right there. And then we have landscaping that we want to kind of help incorporate the miners. But some of the design direction was to allow a sense of, like if you look in the upper left corner, how does it feel like Sopris Park and the pool still blend together a little bit? And so if we were to do something, this mosaic on the fence, how would it also engage with that? Like that, to me, that would be part of an artist's brief. We don't want to do a big row of hops or planting or that kind of thing, but we could do this thing that would like celebrate the visual and you could see in and out
Connection.
and still be really cool and not just a chain link fence.
And not feel like it's an ending. there.
Exactly, that there's flow between and so that's where we've kind of said what were the opportunities in the landscape for some of this integration.
On that note, can you describe that like rationale for the fence following it looks like it comes in and goes around,
Yeah.
I don't know,
Kind of.
and then comes around the rock and then is there a reason why it's not simplified to some extent?
Yes, so, oh boy,
I mean,
keep this tree on one side,
yeah, okay.
keep the bridge, keep Miners Memorial, right? And on the pool side, eke out every bit of space that we could, including the ability to make sure we kept a fair amount of lawn space. So this whole side on the north of that is lawn, and so they kind of bleed. So we could have done something where it went, straight across behind Miners. But I think because we see the fence as a part of this design, we actually wanted it to like engage with the landscape and with Miners and push its edges in either direction, and really modeling this fence where it went straight across. Especially if we end up where, okay, for a while, it's gonna have to just be chain link. It was really abrupt for Sopra's side, especially the Sopra's part.
Well, are there a few, I'm trying to picture shade trees. Is there one, like when you said, is there a tree on the pool side that's gonna offer shade on that grassy
Here?
Sopra side too?
So there is one elm tree here, if you can see my cursor moving, that would be taken out.
Taken out, okay.
Yep. The rest of, these are all elm trees down in here. So the rest of these will remain. And because they're on the south, they throw quite a bit of shade into the pool area. That said, there's no love lost as we have, as we're taking down some of the elm trees.
Yeah.
They trash the
Yeah.
pool system as it exists. But right now, there's only one tree in this lower corner that will be
And there's
taken
no
out.
tree over toward the Forest Service line.
The spruce tree will be removed. These 3 cherries, we want to relocate around the Miners. So they'll actually be moved off of Main Street. And if our arborist agrees, we're gonna try and transplant those. The pine on Main remains, the large elm on the kind of the corner of 7th and Main, the huge one, remains. There's 2 locusts that frame the entrance right now. And we've lost those. They're already dying.
So really the only good trees are those cherry trees that you're trying to save, right?
And transplant, right. And then our planting plan has new street trees, but we don't have room for any other trees. We're bringing shade in 2 other ways. We've got, you'll see in this photo, we're gonna have these, a removable umbrella system over the lawn area.
Is
on
that the
south.
circle colors?
Yeah, those are the colored circles. Yep. And then actually at the end, really in the toddler end of the recreation pool, we'll be looking to do, it's almost like camouflage netting. So like you would have in the military, that they cover things so you can't see them from above. And those, it's a lot of different things as opposed to a traditional shade sail. They take a lot less structure because they have a filtered light and wind goes through them. So you can do very small posts that hold up that shade. So that would be over the whole end of the pool deck and the rec. And then obviously the shade of the canopy from the building.
Is there one of the 6 opportunities that stands out to everyone in terms of the posts or the wall on Main Street?
Of the posts and the fence, I think those are, it's not a huge budget, so I'm not sure how far
It'll go.
it'll go.
Can I ask a question? This is Lori.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure, and I'm sure you guys can answer the question. I thought that the money that CPAC was getting from the 1% fund, I didn't realize it's being put back into the project. I thought it was just kind of a payment to CPAC to do whatever they would choose to do with that money at some point in time. But it sounds like the intent is to take that money and put it back into the project, although that is not really has to happen. Is that true?
I think the way that the resolution is written is it's to be used on site for the project. If it's not used, I think up to 15% can go to a general fund, like to the existing 1% account. And then if that happens, then it can be used elsewhere. But I think the intention is that 83 would be maintained for art on the site.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I have the resolution here and I can find the like exact language where it may call that out specifically, but that is, I think, the understanding that I've been operating with.
Yeah,
If you
I had a
guys were
similar
gonna-
question.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. I had a similar question, so thanks for asking that.
I was just gonna ask if you had to choose a third option, like, is there a third that kind of sticks out for people?
I really like the Main Street frontage. I feel like the engaging, I don't know what else is gonna happen there if that doesn't, right? Like, and,
Mhm.
or if
Yeah.
the patterning would happen in some way with the masonry, but the translucency and having a little bit of the interior of the building spill out into the right of way makes a lot of sense to me. It feels like it activates that section of street that otherwise doesn't have a lot of activation. And I think the like concept makes sense and the technological piece is intriguing. Like, and so I think that's cool. It reminds me of like that translucent concrete. And so my question is like, how does light permeate the CMU and get through to that? And is it something that's noticeable and meaningful enough? I think there's what is it, like a music box house in Aspen that has a kind of pattern on the siding that references some song. And so I think thinking about what that patterning is could be a really cool ask of an artist, you know, like it's not as obvious, like paint us a picture of Sopris, but it's like, what's the thing that is maybe not on the surface that we can dig a little bit deeper into and be non-literal with and convey and pattern that can come across that way so that there's a story that you kind of have to learn and discover. And I think that's an opportunity for that. And I just like like it activates Main Street a little bit. All the other ones feel interior to me. And so you experience them if you're like the fence, if you're in Sopris Park, or if you're in the pool area itself. So I like having one of those, but I also just like the 1% having value to the entire community, even if you're not a frequent user of the pool.
Nice.
Yeah.
That would have been my choice too, was Main Street. Like that translucency.
And
Yeah,
how,
and it's a little bit tough to tell, but from this bottom image, those glass blocks are really intended to be what you're experiencing. Like if you're in one of the restrooms or something, or the ticket office, it's like a frosted glass block product that would actually be in plane with the CMU structure. So you would get the light and sort of, I think, the like blobish, like
Figure.
light versus pattern, right, coming through that. It's going to be frosted, so like you're not going to actually get to see individual bricks, right? But you would,
Right.
I think, get the impression of where light is versus where it isn't, if that makes sense.
and how tall is that facade on Main Street?
The overall height of that parapet, I want to say it's around 14 feet. It might be a little bit higher or lower. It varies. So like the wall on Main Street is set by the sight line required to hide the equipment on the roof. Yeah, there it is. So the main street facade is taller than the facade on the back of the building.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
So it's a one-story building, a
Mhm.
little bit tall ceilings, but then the parapet has to extend all the way here because the equipment on top is,
Is
I mean, we've
taller.
got heat exchangers
Visible.
and solar and so then this parapet extends so that you can't see any of that equipment.
Yeah, I mean,
You
that
see
to
that's
me
the move.
seems like the most important place to have good texture, color. That's a lot of wall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It is.
Yep. Right on.
Yeah, it could be cool to incorporate like a ceramic artist, or mosaic. I know Shannon Muse did a great thing with the library with the columns out there. That was like, I think all of her projects she took on.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, with quotes and stuff from the
And
community.
changes in the light too. I
Mhm.
mean, I love the way it changes in the light.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I've also seen really cool projects where with like enamel bricks that were integrated
Mhm.
into that. And so I think, you know, thinking about the Clay Center and thinking about the like resources we have in the community, and finding a way, you know, to create that texture and visual interest with different materials too, and things that like, yeah, like finding a way for an artist to come up with a pattern and then also have local artists making bricks, that, you know, I think could be another element of inclusion there.
It's kind of the original concept of quilting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were generally taking leftover pieces and you might create a theme. This quilt will be blue, but it would come from all sorts of different pieces of blue fabric.
Yeah,
It's
and
kinda neat.
it's a community process
And
too
then-
sometimes,
exactly.
right? Where like certain artists are maybe contributing their color and or fabric and you're sharing those things, and there's this kind of cross pollination, and there's a kind of mosaic that happens from that. So
Can I ask, can we just move a tiny bit to process, just because
Yeah.
then we'll probably have to, and remember, this is just the beginning of our discussion. None of this has to get figured out by land use and so our hope would be this is just the first step and then we're figuring out, you know, what we need to like execute. But Brian, in your example, so did that artist do that design and the installation at the library?
I don't really remember. I mean, Shannon's a local mosaic glass artist. She could be a great resource.
Okay.
Cause I feel like she probably did build some of it on site at her place, which is not far from the library.
Okay.
Yeah, good
Yeah.
question.
Because so I guess that's our question, right? Is maybe as we narrow in on the opportunities that you guys really liked, and I think those are the ones that are resonating with us as well. You know, what are the methods and process to proceed, right?
Mhm.
We saw some as a full-on defense would be, we might write an artist brief, decide on what budget went out for design and installation and their full commission, and then like, there it is, and it's its own thing. That's probably one of the only ones. The other ones feel like there's so much more integration with the
Mhm.
design
And there's
then
so
the
much more permanent, aren't they?
construction
Yeah.
process. I
Yeah.
mean,
Right.
yes,
Right.
presumably,
I th-
right?
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's two different processes a little bit, right? Like with the
Okay.
fence, that I think is obviously one where an artist could take it from concept to completion probably pretty simply. And then the other one is more of, like you said, integrating it into the architectural design, and that happens sooner. And there's more kind of intimate relationship between the artist and the design team, I think. And then I think, you know, there's the process of us like making sure that we understand what that end goal is.
Yep.
And then there's the like artist selection process and that design review approval process.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Like
think so.
to break those out into
And
like,
we're working with you guys on all of those pieces.
I think so. I mean, I think the resolution, like we haven't done this in a while, right? And so I think that we can kind of figure it out and ask some questions about what makes the most sense. obviously you guys already have a lot on your plate. We're like a volunteer citizen board. And so making sure that we lean into each other's expertise a little bit, I think
Right.
feels like the right move
Yep.
to
Okay,
me.
Great.
And then like we mentioned with the Clay Center and like the other resources in town, it might make sense to lean on those resources too. So, I think obviously some of that just has to get defined a little bit and just make sure that there's an open line of communication as we kind of move through those things and figure it out. My gut is that we're probably not equipped to do all of that and then like kind of project manage it and integrate it with what you're doing. And so maybe it's a matter of us helping to refine what those opportunities are, understand a little bit more of the scope of that, and then kind of reviewing that like artist selection, artist like call process and making some comments and feedback and letting somebody else kind of run with that piece. And then like getting an update on what the like design review looks like.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
I think that makes a ton of sense.
But it also
Taylor?
probably would behoove us to integrate some of these entities that we have relationships with, like
Yeah, that-
artists and Play Center, so that, we're all talking about the same thing. So what one group here is another group here is
Yeah.
that it doesn't become so diluted,
I think
that
making
was my
connections.
question.
Sorry, go ahead, Taylor.
I was just gonna say, that was my question, was kind of who wants to lead the charge on like, call for artists, and who's really kind of, I mean, seemingly you guys kind of have a lot of those relationships and hope like could kind of bring the people in that make sense for the opportunities that we really
Yeah.
want to champion.
The way I've seen it work well in the past is a collaboration between the design team and the folks who have the artist networks at hand.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that, just having somebody who has experience working with artists and then the architecture team who can bring that expertise and say, well, these are the inputs that we need. These are the qualifications that we're looking for. And then the artist perspective coming to the table and saying, well, this is what artists are going to be used to. How do we make sure that those things align? So I think for the call to artists, it'd be nice if there was some, I would be happy if the design team like took the lead on it and that we were able to look at that and say, have you considered X, Y, and Z from an artist perspective?
Yeah, we'd put like a finer point on, based on this conversation, which opportunities, like, okay, let's throw those three out and let's pursue these three, right? And then kind of put a finer point on what that would mean, right? What the call would really look like.
Yep.
And then
Proceed.
you guys would give us feedback on that. Well, an artist's not gonna be interested in that or this, or whatever. And then help us just put the word out. And then we together would say like, select the artist and all those things. And then they'd integrate with us.
Yep.
But then, yeah, and we're gonna have, it is interesting. We kind of have an overall design committee. We have our design advisory group, our DAG. And so we'll want to make sure like what that looks like, where there's the synergy between that and then like design reviewing the integration of the art in particular. So it's a little bit to figure out.
Yeah.
On something like, I have a question, let's say the brick. Can there be kind of a two-step process? So if we say, hey, we just want to kind of go out there right now, engage an artist that helps put a lot more emphasis on the whole quilting idea, or just like integrate that idea and then stop there. If we don't necessarily know we could execute, let's say, Clay Center, like firing something, actual doing construction. Do you think that as a two-step process would be okay and make sense?
So
And
I just want to make sure I understand, like you're suggesting that there's an artist engaged to help kind of refine the artist role and overall concept. And
Or
then
do you mean
Yes.
stimulate ideas for that?
I mean, I guess but
I think-
both, just help integrate with the architects to like design that what this really is, right? The
Yeah.
color or the
I think I would
pattern or-
see them coming in, Heather, and like actually working with our team and saying like, hey, if we were gonna sketch out an art concept around this quilt concept, like which it would get really detailed about which kind of brick units we're creating. Are they textured? Are they colored? What colors? Where's the glass? How do those fade? Like getting an artist input into that process, that which we're currently kind of undertaking as the architect. But if we wanted to really call this kind of the arts integration, that would be the logical sort of point to bring them in, right?
Yes, and what I meant was just putting that call out versus you could do it differently where you said, okay, we're gonna put out a call for the artist and the integration of the clay center or someone else that's gonna actually help like fire the ceramics and come
Mhm.
up with the material to execute the design.
Mhm.
Do you think we could do that in 2 steps?
I think there's just maybe some caution about like making sure that the scope is clear and that it might end and not continue with
Okay.
that initial artist,
Okay,
right? Like,
Yep.
I think there are certainly artists who are probably better suited to that first phase of conceptualizing and thinking about that process and then how to like engage a broader network. And it may make sense for them to like overlap and kind of be a trajectory through that whole thing rather than like, hey, I'm phase 1 and then
they'd still advise on fabrication.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Can I ask
I
you a
think-
question, Taylor?
Yeah.
Has the structural material for that, say, front facade already been designed or, chosen? Like you
Yeah.
talked about brick, but is that a given, like what's been designed?
Yeah, so the structural system is a CMU wall behind that. You can't really see it well in these renderings, but there's basically a CMU wall, a standard CMU wall that's insulated, kind of meets code requirements, right? And that's behind that brick facade. And what we're proposing is the glass block effectively becomes kind of like windows. So there are these kind of zones that we've punched through the CMU wall where we kind of have structural bays in the CMU, but like within those, we can put this glass block as non-structural material. So that's kind of
only certain materials can adhere to that CMU wall? Is it?
So the brick facade is outside the CMU wall, and it's being installed as a traditional brick sort of facade, but we're basically using kind of a basket weave pattern and putting glass block in it. So it stands off from the CMU about 1 inch. And
I
that's
see.
sort of best practice for air gap and water to get behind the facade. If it does get back there, it can come out and dry, right?
Okay, that was my thought, is like, okay, so whatever artistic application goes on the brick or on the glass, it's been
Yeah.
engineered so that it'll, deal with the water and the freeze and the
Yeah,
thaw
right.
and all
This
that.
kind of meets the like best practices for the R value for energy purposes, like getting a good, envelope, and then also the water tightness and air sealing.
Okay,
I would say also the brick facade itself, what kind of led us down this path and where we're at and what we're kind of showing you today is a product of the budget as well. And this is really a cost-effective way to do the brick because it's still a pretty traditional brick facade. The units are the same, but we're like trying to find a really interesting way to stack those bricks because that is cost-effective. So
sure.
that's what's really pushed us to kind of solve this problem. It's been a really big challenge. We've spent a lot of time like we're trying to rack our brains about how do we make this box interesting on Main Street, make it worthy of this corner and the pool, and express something really interesting that feels unique to Carbondale. So that's kind of the backstory, I would say, on what led us down the quilt path. But what we have talked about that's not, completely expressed in this slide is, maybe some of these bricks start to like push and pull, and like we would have insets that kind of consider how maybe a quilt would go together. So you'd start to see like a band or an edge of a quilt, right? Like the bricks could start to kind of play in plain, or maybe some of the bricks are textured, or maybe there's some interesting glazing happening. Those have all kind of been conversations we've had, but we haven't developed the facade quite that far. And so you're kind of catching us in that moment of like production. And I think also there's an alternate path, like Heather was kind of saying, you know, maybe we get an artist in and they could really inform the process. And I do think that's a reasonable way to do it. That could be really interesting to get them in at this point while we're still really developing it. But I think also we could also try to refine the pattern a little bit more. And then we would have a pattern to give an artist to then kind of overlay on top of. And I think that could maybe be another path if that's solved for like getting one artist, you know, they could start a little bit later in the process, maybe.
And so like one thought I have is the wall, that's the height of the building.
Yeah.
And then the parapet that's covering the things on top. Those outer lays don't have to be the same, right?
Yeah,
Or
totally. We talked about that too. And that could be really interesting, like starting to pull the edges away.
right.
Like the brick edge would expose part of the CMU wall behind it. So it's like you're seeing a part of the box maybe, and this
Right.
really starts to kind of disintegrate at the edges or something. Totally.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like unless you guys have anything else, we have what we need to take the next pass and come back with, okay, this is what we think it makes the most sense.
Cool. That's great. No, I really appreciate you guys sharing that and thinking about integrating art and artists early in the process and already having like some really great ideas. And obviously, the resolution is really clear that art is interpreted very broadly. And I think landscape architects and architects are artists in their own right. So I just appreciate your creativity and thinking about how art can be present on the site. And yeah, I think let's just stay in touch, and I can share some more information with you guys, and we can just make sure that line of communication stays open and follow along.
Cool. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you guys for your
Thank
time.
you Thank you for the visuals. I needed the visuals.
Of
Yeah.
course. Yeah, it's good for artists.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Taylor.
Is Lori gonna stay on long enough to tell us how many entries?
Lori is gonna stay on because that's what we're gonna do now, but I also have that information, so I can share it with you. Thank you, Luis. Yep, appreciate it. So the cafe call closed on the 5th with 70 applicants.
Applicants,
yeah.
like individual pieces
Not
or artists?
individual pieces. Yeah, so there's some artists who submitted multiple works in there. But I think it's a really great quantity to work with. It definitely gives us some options for a full show. I think it was
It's
you know,
always sounds so small at the beginning, when there's only like 3 weeks left, and then boy, they come out.
yeah, I think they all come in at the last minute. It's just how artists work, right? I think
Yeah.
there was probably like, you know, maybe 20% of that up to the last week, maybe. So
We should have asked the pool people if they wanted to put a sculpture there, because now we have 70 things to choose from.
70 things. Pop a sculpture down.
Okay, 2025.
Yeah, we can have next year.
So it's great. I think there were a few that didn't really meet the qualifications in terms of durable materials and that kind of thing. So that first review will probably look pretty close to 70. So we're gonna do, I think, 3 rounds of voting. We talked about maybe just doing one online round and then one in-person round, but I think with the volume, it makes sense to probably break that into 3 like we have done in the past.
Yeah.
I think the goal for that is that round 1 will start this week and go into Monday. So it'll run from Thursday, hopefully, at some point in the day, to Monday the 12th. And then that second round would run from Wednesday, February 14th, so Valentine's Day, to that following Monday, February 19th. So we would have over the weekend with each of those rounds. And then the thought was to try to schedule the CMC lab for the following week, which would be what is that? The week of the 19th.
That President's Day.
So 19th is President's Day, which doesn't really work. And the lab is available on that Thursday and Friday. Friday seemed a little challenging, just
Why does Monday not work? Just because it's
It's
a holiday?
President's Day, and I think the town's closed, like offices are closed.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
We have a holiday as well, my office, so it's not that I couldn't, but I think it just makes sense to
Got it.
avoid that if we want people to participate. Yeah, it's a good point. They did have availability on Thursday and Friday, but Friday seemed tricky.
What
Just
about Wednesday? I'm just out of town Thursday, not that it matters. I mean, you can all figure it out.
Are we talking those days after the Monday of Feb 19?
it's the week of the 19th, but it
Okay,
would be
which
the
day?
22nd or the 23rd is the Thursday and Friday. Let me look at my emails.
I fly out Friday or the early 22nd.
Cancel it.
Wait, early 22nd, so you'd miss 22 or 23.
Exactly.
So that's what you asked.
So I was saying Wednesday, which is the 21st, but I don't know
Wednesday,
that
the
it,
21st, it is available.
I mean, it's okay if it
So I
works for
think-
everyone else.
My question was, is it possible to do it during the day, like a 3 to 5 session rather than in the evening on
Can you do that?
Thursday?
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, I can do that.
Wednesday, I mean.
Lori, would Wednesday work for you?
I believe so. Yeah, that should be fine.
That'd be.
So if we did the 21st from 3 to 5 at CMC, we could do that final in-person round and go over any kind of like nitty-gritty detail about the submissions.
Okay, okay.
Cool.
It seemed to go pretty quickly last year.
Yeah, I think if we get that first round down to somewhere around half, like just take the highest half of the rankings, then that second round will really get into like what we feel are the highest quality from that pool, and that final round should be really about maybe eliminating the last 5 or 6 so that we have some alternates.
Mhm.
So we end up choosing how many with the alternates?
How many alternates do we want, Lori?
I would go at least 20.
Okay,
20 total.
20 total, so 15 that would be in the show with 5 alternates.
Would it be helpful if I were to send out those marketing cards for all the years that we have done those so that you can see the sculptures that have been in the show before, because we have a lot of repeats this year. And so you could you could check the history before you vote.
You mean repeat artists?
I'm gonna peek out the window and see if there's some on the table right here.
But I mean like a lot of years.
Well, that'd
you
be
know,
helpful, yeah.
Yeah, I think they're also online, but if you wanna
Yes, that's
send
true.
links to those. Cool.
Yeah, that'd be.
Does that
You
feel good to everyone?
Do you
Yeah,
guys want
yeah.
links or do you want a PDF of the card?
I don't have a preference.
Either way, yeah.
Because
way.
if I could just send you the link for the website where those pages are, and then you can just go through each year and see those. But
Yeah.
it would be,
that
it might
works.
be
I think
helpful.
that'll work.
Okay.
Yeah, I
okay,
think
I'll do
so.
that. All
I
right.
think it's
'Cause-
more, yeah.
Some comments from the community have been too often it's looking the same.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, produce something. Minutes.
There you go.
Right.
Right.
Get on the CPAC and you can get the word
Vote.
out.
Right.
Great, and so Lori, we will schedule that for Wednesday. You can communicate with the guest jurors.
Okay.
I think we talked about adding Frank to that list.
Yeah,
Um,
okay.
And I don't know if we have his email.
Yeah, I do. I can.
If you want to
it
forward it to me, that would be great.
Yeah.
He's back a week from today.
Okay, great. So just make it in. Cool. Any other questions about the call?
How many individual artists do you know?
I don't know the exact number. I think it's probably around 55 or so, maybe.
Dang.
I don't know. That's just a random guess. I'm just throwing.
Good.
Cool.
Yeah.
So when's the first round start again this week?
You're gonna let us know Thursday or Friday this week?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow's Thursday.
I
Next
will,
Thursday.
I'll send you all an email with your passwords and login information again and reiterate the dates.
Great.
Great.
So I'll get that tomorrow.
The fun part.
Michael, I just have to say this because I just have to, but on a few of the sculptures, we left them in, but some are more like yard art rather than sculptures. So it'll probably be obvious which ones those are, but just kind of visualize some of those on a piece of marble and there's a difference. There's a difference
Yeah.
between the two.
Yeah, no, I think that's
Good.
great to point out.
Okay.
Do we also have like a list or I guess the map or some way to remember where all the locations are? Yeah. Just to keep it in the back of our heads.
Yeah,
I mean, I
that
kind
link
of have
will
it there.
have, yeah, the link will have the maps as well as the photos.
Okay,
Oh, good.
perfect.
And it's all on the website as well under the CPAC page, but yeah. And the story map, there's a link for the story map that Nate did. He's our GIS guy and I'll include that as well because that's very good. It's very clear.
Yeah, the story map's great. That would be cool to look at.
Great.
Awesome. Well, if there's nothing else, I think we can make a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Thanks, everybody, for
Yeah.
a really informative extra long meeting. It's great one.
But I think,